are we going to live in this place and respect the basic land and particularly respect the critters that are already here and the wildlife?
We have to decide, about the remaining wild areas. Are we going to let them stay wild, or are we going to sort of take them over for human use?
I want us to have more trails. I want us to enjoy our public lands and not just shut it all down.
That conflict is not going to go away.
You almost can't describe it, you gotta experience it. You know it when it's there. When you step outside or you step into that situation and there's something a little bit bigger than yourself, something that has so little to do with you and society, it's like it exists on its own.
The value of wilderness still remains really important because it's a place where human interest doesn't supersede everything.
I describe wilderness as a quality of life issue. I believe it's something that everybody needs to have a connection to. If I don't connect to it at some point in time during the year, it's almost like there's a void, left in your soul.
The wilderness to me means going out and forgetting my troubles. It's going into the space that's non-judgmental, and it's equally as beautiful to everyone and everything.
When you step in it and you are fully aware and you are fully appreciative of all the intricacies and all those life forms and processes and dynamics that are going on around you that, like I said, that have little to do with you.
So in 1964, an almost unanimous vote by the U.S. Congress passed the Wilderness Act, creating a system of designated wilderness areas that are protected under law to maintain their primitive natural state. A secondary protection that was then created is the Wilderness Study Area, that is granted to lands that qualify for wilderness, but for one reason or another have not received the full protection.
The Palisades Wilderness Study Area came about because of passage of the Wyoming Wilderness Act in 1984. And with that came additional responsibilities on our part to make sure that it still could be included in the wilderness system. What we are primarily focused on is maintaining the physical characteristics of a wild country.
I'd say it's a super dynamic landscape, constantly changing. Things from rock slides, landslides, avalanches. Big
gullies that open up that just make the trail not that appealing.
You'll find debris pushed through the forest, mudslides pushed through a whole forest. It's just an extremely ever-changing landscape, and you find something new every time that you go out there.
To me, the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem, it's one of the last places that we have a little remnant of what once was.
This is a corridor, a migration corridor. This is a place where large ungulates reproduce, come and they feed.
A really important part of wilderness was protecting land to kind of stem the impacts of man coming into this wild country and provide little refuges for wildlife.
If you look at not just the Palisades Wilderness Study Area, but the whole intact Palisades roadless area, it's almost 250,000 acres. So it's 250,000 acres of unroaded, wild, intact land. And they're not making any more of that.
The Palisades, located just outside Jackson Hole, kind of lives in the shadows of more famous public lands such as Grand Teton and Yellowstone National Parks and the Gros Ventre Wilderness, all that attract visitors from around the world. I feel that the Palisades has really benefited from that because it has been overlooked, and few people have actually made it their regular practice to go in there.
Jackson draws a lot of visitors because the parks are pretty spectacular, but the surrounding national forest is amazing.
The greater Yellowstone ecosystem is so unique in so many ways, but our community here in the Tetons is right in the heart of it. You know, we're not on the fringe, we're not just outside of it looking in, we are in the heart of it.
That's why people want to live here, you know, just beyond the animals, beyond all of that. It's access to it, and it's access to nice places. You know, we don't want to go to places that are logged out. We want to go to the places that we can go to now. And there's absolutely no question that people take that for granted.
It's almost hard to explain how good it makes me feel to be in the backcountry on my snow machine. Like, let's just talk about that. I've covered hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles in our area with a couple of my friends and never seen another person in a day.
Access to this place, to places like this, to other places in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem are going to experience more and more pressure from folks like me who want to come and recreate on these lands.
Take the mountain bike, the snowmobile, and the dirt bike community together. It's a huge community. Wilderness designation is the death sentence to all three of those recreational activities that I just mentioned.
You know, early in the wilderness movement, the opposition was coming from big industries such as timber harvest, mining, oil and gas. What is important to realize now in the modern fight for new wilderness, the major opposition is coming from recreationists, specifically the motorized and mechanized community. And that isn't just true here in Jackson Hole, that's occurring across the country.
Prevalent among my peers, my other mountain bikers that I know, there's a thought that mountain bikers should be allowed to ride wherever they want, do whatever they want. Some people are very entitled, and that's destructive. That mentality pits us against other users rather than makes a cohesive recreational pool of people who can protect these lands. I don't think that's a very productive mindset, and it's an extremely selfish and entitled mentality that has no place in Wyoming. I don't think it really has any place at all. No, I don't care where you are.
It's multiple use, which I strongly believe in, but you shouldn't be able to just go wherever you want because you like to do an activity.
We tried to pull in people with interest in more mechanized uses, so we did have representatives of snowmobilers, mountain bikers, folks who like to hunt and like to get back into the backcountry on horseback, people who were interested in hiking and experiencing the backcountry without motors and without motorized access.
Put all those folks in a room, into workshops over a couple of years to hash this thing out.
So yeah, when the recommendations from the committee went to county commissioners, I don't think anyone would have guessed how effective a job some of the groups did at getting people to show up.
On Tuesday, October the 9th at 9 a.m., the Teton County Board of County Commissioners are going to hold a special session to vote on the final Wyoming Public Lands Initiative proposal.
What happened in Teton County for the WPLI was that one user group showed up en masse. They seemed to sort of dominate the conversation.
Here to speak out against the largest land grab in 34 years. It limits us to very little land to be used. There is no gain. The wilderness side certainly gains.
Clearly, some people who were there you know, to represent their interests, which is 100% understandable, but they just had bad information about what the process was about and recommending.
This proposal is set forth would be disastrous to the local biking community. Some of the trails up on Teton Pass are crown gems. They're the most important trails that we have. They're the ones that avid bikers like to ride the most. Taking those away would be disastrous. Taking away 173,000 new acres of land that we would love to bike on someday would also be disastrous.
I think Jesse and Ample did a very good job of scaring people that they were going to lose something.
I think that a lot of the people that spoke were misinformed, and so their understanding of the process and where it was going and what it would do was probably based on either word of mouth or from messaging from some of these advocacy groups representing recreation that were involved.
If passed, this proposal will result in the largest loss of mountain bike, snowmobile, and dirt bike access on our public lands in the last 34 years.
Many of the people walked away from the WPLI with this oversimplification that both sides were equally unwilling to compromise, but that simply wasn't true. For the record, as one of the pro-wilderness voices in the conversation, we were willing to, for example, permanently secure access to the entire Teton Pass trail system that so many bikers referenced in their opposition. We were also willing to leave other parts of the landscape open to motorized use. But unfortunately, an intentional manipulation of facts rallied the mountain bike and motorized community to feel that protecting the Palisades was somehow a direct assault on them and their access, which ended up shutting down the entire process.
We all love going out to fish. We all love going out to hunt. We all love to enjoy public lands. But that right hasn't been available to everybody all of the time, and we need to recognize that. Indigenous people have an intimate relationship with land. It's not some goodie bag to like draw from. The land is a living, breathing ancestor. It's a relationship with you and the land. You wouldn't sell or you wouldn't ride dirt bikes across your grandmother's back. Indigenous people have a little bit more like nuance with like how they see a riverbed or how they see like a tree or how they see nature. It's a totally different understanding that modern land management practices do not feel comfortable actually acknowledging. But it is definitely important for land management to include Indigenous voices.
The only thing that's really mine is my hot air right now, and the control I have over myself to know that I belong to something and it doesn't belong to me it makes me smile. So there's like two types of people. I feel like I could walk outside my door and say, this is mine, and feel like the tiniest piece of dust and just like float around and feel great. Or I can walk out the door and say, this is mine, and rub my hands together and feel like it's for me. That I have complete control. And
at what point do you deny yourself for the sake of the greater, whether that means just not eating all that food that you want to eat because you're hungry, or whether that means I'm just not going to go biking there.
This is something that is more important than just me. There's a need for that kind of place where kids can go walk and see what it was like before we were here.
You know, wilderness character, you know, you should have that quietness. Everything should slow down. You know, it's not a race.
Wild places have a greater value than human experience because they're homes to animals and other plants. And it's not just us, it's their home too.
I mean, my personal sentiment towards wilderness is, you know, I'm willing to pay to know it exists because it's part of the whole ecosystem services, it's part of the web of life. It provides value to me beyond just dollars and cents.
The outdoors is very predictable. I believe, I think buffalo are predictable. I think bears and wolves are predictable. We know what they're going to do, but we continue to think that what we do isn't wild, isn't unpredictable. We're the worst. We are wild. We are out of control. But the rest of it is just as it should be.
Some days are long.
The Palisades is definitely qualifies for wilderness and definitely deserves to be designated. The interesting thing about the Palisades is it's maintained its characteristics in the face of all this recreational and usage pressure. And it kind of is a test case, I guess, nationally, where you've got an area that is deserving of wilderness, but it's loved to death by the people. I hope the Palisades wins, but we'll see.
I feel like there is still a solution within reach for this landscape. The recreationists in this story are not the antagonists. I am a recreationist. We have this opportunity, and I feel an obligation to zoom out and consider the entire Palisades area as a whole.
It's not going to be easy. It hasn't been easy. It's not going to be pretty. It's going to be ugly at times, but this is the time. The people are here, the energy is here, and there's no better time than right now.
Ultimately, I'm hopeful that we'll have some further protection for these areas so that they're around for us in their near natural state for as long as I'll be around, as long as my daughter will be around.
I want to be on the right side of history, I want to be on the right side of history. I know we could access that, yet to look back on our generation or our community right here in Jackson Hole and say, this is what we did, I hope we can say we're proud of it. I hope my kids can say I'm proud of it. So there's a certain level of human need out there, and there's a level of human want, and we can separate our wants from our needs a little bit. And I think in this case, yeah, I hope we can be proud of our decisions. So yeah, I'm pro-wilderness.
If you long to see the stars again, kicking in the hunter's snare, be happy, not loving, love had never set you free, and don't forget that the lost shall be redeemed somehow, and never grow to